You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, back as always with Mark O'Hare and Adrian Clarke. And Adrian, we're fresh off Wednesday night's game, so we haven't got Thursday night's games in front of us. So Chelsea, Manchester United, and Liverpool versus Sheffield United. But the rest of the midweek card, it was decent, but a lot of results did go as expected.
Yeah, they weren't great fixtures, were they? I think everybody knew that Arsenal would beat Luton. City, Villa, I suppose, was a biggie. They turned up, and both managers risked rotation, didn't they? I thought, which was interesting. Arsenal heavy rotation, very unlike Arteta. First time he's made 5 changes since 2021, so it really went against the grain there, but it paid off. And City leaving out De Bruyne and Haaland, pretty bold, but didn't seem to affect them, did it?
Yeah, Mark, you got most of the games in, but City Villa was going one way. You sort of eventually said, look, this game is done.
Yeah, I was just tired, in all honesty, on Wednesday, trying to keep up with all the games on Tuesday night and then doing so again on Wednesday. And yeah, I mean, City rested the big boys and they were in a commanding position in the second half. And Villa, without Emi Martinez, without John McGinn, without Ollie Watkins, and then it looked like Unai Emery had taken almost a sort of free hit approach by just kind of resting and rotating a few others. It certainly wasn't anywhere close to a first choice Aston Villa side, even if the players available. So, I thought if these guys aren't going to play the big boys and sort of go at it for 90 minutes, then I'll sign out early and sort of just turned it off with 20 minutes to play, knowing after the full Foden hat-trick that anything that I wake up to, which might not be a resounding City success, would be one of the stories of not just this season, but probably ever. So, don't think I missed too much in the last 20 minutes.
Oh, no. Honestly, for the Arsenal-Luton game, very quickly, the first half was good. The second half, the first shot of the second half from either side was 34 minutes into it. It was absolutely bonkers. I mean, it was pretty dreary. But
what's quite, I mean, it's different from an Arsenal perspective because you're in pole position in terms of the goal difference. But I expected City and Liverpool on Thursday night to be going for it for 90 minutes because there's a good chance the goal difference could play a big part in this title race. And Arsenal have obviously racked up the goals in 2024, but perhaps a home game against Luton was an opportunity to sort of really put the foot down even further.
Yeah. And it could quite easily come down to goal difference on that final day. So we'll see, especially with all 3 teams having home games. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And before we get going, if you do hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel completely for free, it'd be much appreciated. Insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of all the guys. There's timings available in the description wherever you're listening or watching the podcast for each individual match. And obviously do check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange. All prices we talk about here will be invariably the best price. Check out the odds checker grid. The 4 games, incidentally, race card order: Everton, Burnley, Brighton versus Arsenal, Manchester United versus Liverpool, the big one. And then we go with Tottenham Hotspur versus Forest. So we'll start with a crucial game at the bottom here. It's Everton versus Burnley. Take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Everton 174 favourites. Seems quite short. Burnley 5.2. The draw is 4.1. Both teams to score, yes, 1.86. So the market expecting a tight game here. The Asian handicap line sees Burnley get a 3/4 of a goal head start. And the goal line here, again, on that same theme, 2.5. The overs 187. So, Adrian, I mentioned that Burnley price. You're ultimately going to side with them on the Asian handicap line. They've been quite decent in recent weeks, I would say.
Yeah, I think the prices are a little bit ridiculous, if I'm honest. It's not as if Goodison Park has been much of a fortress for Everton this season or in recent years either. So, yeah, for me, Burnley are coming into this game in slightly better form than Everton. They're improved. The last 4 games have been pretty good from their end. They seem to have made some decent improvements. Across those 4 games, they've had 13, 18, 17 and 11 shots. They've scored 7 goals across those 4 matches. They're offering a real threat. And I was massively impressed with what they did against Chelsea with 10 players. And then they're probably unlucky not to beat Wolves at home in the last one. So, yeah, I think that Burnley think they can still survive. I don't think they've given up on this at all. This is a huge game, 6-pointer, real motivation for Burnley to go to Goodison and get something, maybe even a win. And of course, they've also got Forest and Sheffield United to come. So they believe, I think, that they can salvage something. They're only 3 points off Luton, of course. So yeah, and it's quite easy to oppose Everton, isn't it, at the moment? I know that Mark all season has been, saying that the metrics are ridiculously high about Everton and expected points are miles better, but they haven't won for ages. I mean, no win since Christmas. I think it's 13 winless overall. And during that period, they've scored more than one goal once across 13 games. Now, if they don't score more than one goal in this game, I think our bet is landing. So Burnley +1 is a shout here for me. 1.78. Okay, it's a bit short, but I think given how lightweight Everton are up front, it's got to be a runner, hasn't it? It's got to be, with Burnley scoring goals. You're talking about, if they continue that, then Everton need to score maybe 3 goals for this bet to lose. So yeah, I feel like this is quite a strong play, really. Yeah, it was a good draw for Everton at Newcastle, but they could have been out of sight early on in that game. They did win. In fairness, Everton did win well at Burnley. They sort of cut them apart really in the first Sean Dyche derby of the season. But I don't know if they're going to do it this time around. I think Burnley can get a result.
The Sean Dyche derby going for Burnley +1.0, 178. Mark, on Everton's expected goal numbers, and we'll get to this later, maybe talking about Harrogate and in general, like when a team's posting really good expected goal numbers, when do you sort of go, okay, this team is due, for those numbers to even out and get a big win, to maybe this team is underachieving for the season and maybe we've got to oppose them? It's always a tough one to define as someone who follows stats like that, but also use your eye as well for the eye test.
Yeah, so I think earlier in the season, Everton were producing impressive performance data numbers, but also with the eye test, you could see a team who were applying themselves in the right manner and putting teams under great pressure, creating opportunities, denying opposition sides the same sort of level of chances. I think back to the Manchester United game at Goodison Park as a fine example. They absolutely battered United and ended up losing that, 2-0 or 3-0. And, a part of it is luck, but ultimately a big part of it is quality of player and confidence, obviously, in the final third. Dominic Calvert-Lewin went, 20-odd games without a goal before he scored that penalty against Newcastle in midweek, and he is supposed to be the talisman of this team, and that's an enormous problem. Beto hasn't transitioned to English football as quickly or as fluently as perhaps Everton would have hoped. And beyond that, you're sort of looking to the likes of Dwight McNeil, Jack Harrison to contribute a bit more. Obviously, Doucouré was doing his best before the African Cup of Nations, probably hasn't been on it since then either. So, your key individuals who, let's be honest, there's not a great deal of depth there at Everton in forward areas, aren't playing to the standards that they would have set themselves up at the start of the campaign, which is a big part of it. But yeah, in terms of quality, you can be producing the best performance data numbers in the Premier League if you like, but if you haven't got the players to put those opportunities away, you're going to struggle. And defensively, they're giving away really silly goals, really unlike kind of Sean Dyche team goals. And yeah, just compare and contrast with Manchester United, who look an absolute mess, so chaotic and underwhelming at times, but they have got world-class operators. I mean, I say that fairly loosely, but very, very good players compared to the likes of Everton, who don't have to be on their day all the time to be able to finish those opportunities. So it can make a big, big difference. But what we've seen is a regression with Everton in terms of their data. If you look at the last 12 or 16 games, they're definitely bottom half material. The sort of the narrower the sample size, you look at 8 to 12 games, they're more operating sort of bottom 7, bottom 8. And that's the issue right now, is supporters haven't completely turned on Sean Dyche, but they're growing really frustrated by the style of football. The points deduction hasn't helped. It feels a little bit harsh to be piling pressure on Dyche, because without the points deduction, they would be well clear of relegation, or at least in a much better position. But it's no wins in 13. I think that's the worst run in the Premier League. And the schedule hasn't been massively unkind either. And they've been struggling to get results against some middling opposition who they should be fancying to sort of get results against. And for me, there's a sort of, obviously there's pragmatism that Dyche brings, but the passive nature about them, they're not putting teams under pressure in the same manner they once were. and they're starting slowly. They've scored 2 first-half goals in the last 13 games. And when you're chasing games and a team like Everton, you're always going to be in trouble for that. So, the numbers are regressing. I think confidence is dipping in both boxes, and I completely agree. I would say, what would you rather back here? Everton at 174 to win the game, or Burnley at 178 with a +1 goal start, knowing that if they lose by 1 goal margin, it's cash back. For me, it's a no-brainer here to be with Burnley. Look, they have been one of the big beneficiaries of those points deductions to Everton and Forest. It looked for a long time like they were dead and buried. They're still in with a very outside chance, but it is a chance of survival, and getting a result at Goodison Park suddenly changes the complexion of their own survival fight. And look, there could be more points penalties coming Everton's way as well. So Burnley are not down yet, and they're still fighting. We saw that at Chelsea, twice coming back from a goal behind, forcing 18 shots with 10 men for nearly an hour of that game. Midweek, they really ought to have beaten Wolves based on the balance of play as well. Unbeaten in 4. They've scored in 9 of 12 since Boxing Day. Clean sheets do still remain a little bit elusive, but their record against the teams outside of the top bracket is reasonable. 4 wins, 3 draws, and 4 defeats if you exclude the top 12, and away from home, when you exclude their 4 defeats at the top 4, 2 wins, 4 draws, and 5 defeats. So more often than not, they've actually avoided defeat when playing away against the teams outside the top 4. If Everton aren't scoring freely, as Adrian's already outlined all of those numbers, then surely you want Burnley on side of the +1 start here, because Everton need to win by 2 for this bet to lose. That's occurred just 5 times all season. And Everton, I actually fancy Burnley to score in this game. And I think the BTTS price is quite attractive. And if they do score, Everton need 3 for this bet to lose. They've done that 4 times all season. So just an interesting stat I saw before we came on. Everton have won 9 times at home in the Premier League since the start of last season. All 9 of those victories came alongside a clean sheet. So whenever they fail to keep a clean sheet, they've not won a football match. And I think that's quite telling. So, yeah, all in on Burnley to score. And if they do score, I think they absolutely can get this handicap over the line.
Yeah, I'll make it a hat trick for that. Burnley plus 1.0 on the Asian handicap, 178. Be interesting to see if that shortens a bit before kickoff. We'll move on to Brighton versus Arsenal. Take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Brighton 5.4 underdogs to Arsenal, who are 167 here. The draw is available at 4.5. Both teams to score yes is favoured with 169. The Asian handicap line sees Brighton get a 1-goal head start. That price is 187. The total here is 2.5, but that's heavily favoured at 164 for the over. Adrian, the market here is giving Brighton a good chance, suggesting it's going to be a tough game and Arsenal aren't going to have it all their own way on Saturday night.
Yeah, well, of course. It looks awkward, doesn't it? Because, the Amex is, it's a stadium that's seen some upsets. They beat Spurs, didn't they, earlier on in the season, handsomely 4-2. They drew with Liverpool earlier on in the season as well. So, but that feels a long time ago. I think Solly March was fit. Certainly Mitoma was fit at those times. I kind of prefer to look at the here and now. Obviously, a flat goalless draw at Brentford in midweek. They're not in great form. Conceded over 30 shots at Liverpool, didn't they? Okay, they were in that game, had some moments, but that's a slight concern, I think, for Roberto De Zerbi. They sliced through them pretty easily at times. Liverpool, they miss Gilmore. It's good for them that Joao Pedro's back, but you've still got a lot of good players out. They've only scored 3 goals as well, Brighton, in their last 5 games. They've dried up a little bit at that end of the pitch, and that's why I will oppose them. I do fancy that Arsenal can go there like they did last year and get a positive result. It was 4-2. It was a bit of a crazy game last year. It was 4-2, and Arsenal was sweating right at the end because Brighton were coming right at them. But this is a different Arsenal, and after resting 5 players in midweek, I do think that they can go into the Brighton game with a little bit of freshness, and they'll need it because you've got to work hard against Brighton. You've got to really, really tough it out with the press. The match at Emirates was one of Arsenal's best performances this season. They absolutely suffocated Brighton with the press. They really got in their faces. They couldn't really pass out. And it was an incredibly one-sided match. Now, I'm not saying this will be one-sided, but if Arsenal replicate their tactics, and I don't see why they wouldn't, a freshened up Arsenal can go there and really get in the faces of Brighton and get some chances. And the other reason you've got to go with Arsenal, in my opinion, is is the defensive record. It's scary. It really is scary. In the calendar year, only 4 goals scored. Every single category: shots faced, shots and targets faced, expected goals against. They've been miles clear in 2024. So they couldn't be in better defensive shape heading to the South Coast. And for this reason, I think that they can go there and get a positive result. I don't think they'll give up loads of chances to Brighton. So for me, it won't be wild, because Arsenal will have respect for Brighton, and Brighton are a decent defensive side themselves. So I think I'm going to go with Arsenal, but that 1.67 gets boosted quite nicely, really, to 2.06 if you think there'll be less than 5 goals. So under Arsenal and under 4.5 would be my selection. This has landed in a stack of Arsenal away games this season, and they're chasing their 14th clean sheet of the campaign, way ahead of everybody else in terms of shutouts. So Arsenal for me and unders.
Okay, currently available 2.06. Mark, I was catching the highlights of Brentford Brighton yesterday on Match of the Day, and Thomas Frank at full time said it was a 50-50 game. And as he did that, it popped up on Match of the Day with the shots count, and it was 5 shots from memory and 24 to 26 shots for Brighton, suggesting that while they didn't have clear-cut chances, they were at least creating them. So you obviously give them a squeak there. What did you think of that game, and then maybe their form over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I criticised them last week before their game against Liverpool, and I don't think they're close to last season's standards, which I think is totally understandable, considering the extra sort of legwork they're having to do with the Europa League, juggling that competition as well as Premier League, the key departures last summer, as well as the injuries they've endured throughout the team, really. But I was impressed with their midweek display against Brentford, especially in that first half. They were absolutely the better team at Brentford, and probably should have made more of the opportunities they created. The second half went a bit flat, really, and kind of played out to your standard 0-0. But certainly in the first half, they were bright. And I was actually pleasantly surprised and impressed by their performance at Anfield last week. I thought they were quite bold and quite brash at times. I'm sure Roberto De Zerbi was well aware that it was an opportunity to impress at Anfield, and I thought they competed pretty well for the most part. Things did fall down in the final third. That sort of lack of conviction, choosing the wrong ball, or just a poor effort when shooting opportunities did arise, did let them down. But there was a plan there, and the plan was executed to a reasonable standard. They attacked Liverpool's inexperienced right-hand side and put Liverpool under stress in that area. And I think that adventurous style in possession does leave them vulnerable against a high pressing side, and Mo Salah did have many opportunities and was quite profligate in that game. But I thought Brighton were tough for the most part, and I think they can be tough to oust, especially at the Amex. I think they are a different proposition in front of their own supporters, and I don't think this is a gimme for Arsenal by any stretch. Relatively impressed by their display against Man City last week. I think we called that game pretty well amongst ourselves, and it was a god-awful game for neutrals to watch. In all honesty, one of the worst I've seen.
Did you considering your bets and tips, Mark? Did you enjoy it?
No, not at all. I don't need to know my personal life, but I picked up a vomiting bug from the little one on the Saturday night. So Sunday I was feeling pretty sorry for myself, sort of in recovery mode, and that just sort of sent me back a few strides watching that game. But Arsenal's approach was understandable. How people can criticise them for that, I don't know. But they got the point they really sort of came for, and even if their title chances kind of lessened because of that result and the last weekend results, but to take 4 points off City, suffocate them pretty much over 2 games as well, and give them next to no opportunities, just goes to show the progress which is being made. And I think for you guys as Arsenal supporters, the future looks very, very bright and encouraging. But I just do think this could be harder than perhaps the odds suggest. You look at Brighton, they have only lost 6 Premier League games under Roberto De Zerbi in 30. They've scored in 26 of those. 4 of the 6 defeats under De Zerbi came in his opening 8 games. So it's 2 losses and 22 home league games now for Brighton. They've gotten results against Spurs, Man City, Liverpool, Man United last season in that sample. So yeah, I'm going to give them a fighting opportunity here to be competitive and back them with a +1 start. So, I think they can score in this game, which I think that's entirely plausible. And if so, Arsenal need 3 to see this bet sink. And I just look at Arsenal's record. Whilst I completely agree they've been superb across the board for the most part, especially this calendar year. You look at their 9 away wins, 7 have come at the bottom 7, and only 4 of their away victories have been by a margin of 2 goals or more. So, I think both bets could potentially, well, Adrian's bet could potentially land, and I get a push here. I don't see Arsenal winning this game comfortably or by at least 2 clear goals. And Brighton's record against the big boys. I always kind of fancy Brighton a little bit more at home against the big boys rather than, say, away against the lesser lights, where they can kind of be a little bit loose. So I think they'll raise the game for Arsenal, and it's whether the Gunners they clearly have the capability to win this game comfortably, but it just feels a bit tricky. It feels a bit trappy for me.
Yeah, good case made from Mark on Brighton. Going to lean Arsenal and under 4.5, 206, hide behind a bigger price, perhaps. But nonetheless, let's hopeful of both those bets coming in, because I am with the guys. It is going to be a tight game and a tough one for Arsenal. If they are going to win the title, it is, you would think, a must-win game for them. We'll move on to Manchester United versus Liverpool, as producer Ryan gives us a bit of stick in the private chat. Manchester United 4.5 underdogs to Liverpool, who are 1.77 favourites. The draw is 4.6. Both teams to score yes. This is a short price now, 147. No is available at 15 to 8, or around 2.88. The Asian handicap line sees United get a 3/4 goal head start at even money. The total for this game, 3.5, marginally favoured to under at 193. Mark, we'll stick with you on this one. I mean, we've seen this movie before, only 3 or 4 weeks ago. It seems that Manchester United have picked up a couple of injuries, or at least those players that were meant to come back have sort of got injured again.
I mean, I don't really know what to say about Man United anymore, rather than sort of parroting the same old stuff with them. But we're obviously speaking before the Chelsea game, but even if they went out and beat Chelsea 4-0 with their best performance of the season, I just can't be with them. I can't trust them. And I think the end is getting nearer and nearer for Erik ten Hag at the minute. I think it's understandable that Manchester United can perhaps turn it on for big moments in big games against big teams. We saw the FA Cup. They came alive a little bit at times against Liverpool at Old Trafford, but I think it's a different kettle of fish when you go away to Brentford immediately after the international break. But they're professional players, right, who are supposed to be at the top end of the game. So you can't really allow for standards to drop, really. And I think it's saying something when Erik ten Hag has to come out after a game and plead for passion and work rate from his players. And I think the guys now in charge at Manchester United are smart individuals, smart operators, and I'm absolutely certain they'll be planning for the future, probably without Ten Hag, and I can't see any defence for him right now. So the funny thing is with United, though, is they do have good individual players, good individual quality, and on their day they can produce a performance. We've seen that before, and there's kind of, for me, there's memories of the Solskjaer era, with the chaotic nature of Manchester United from week to week, but turn up against Liverpool and Man City, and there's an opportunity for them to sort of surprise you a little bit. But it's unsustainable. The process is horrendous, and to concede 30 shots against Brentford is downright embarrassing, really. And I think if you compare where Manchester United are right now to the journeys that Liverpool have been on with Klopp, with City and Pep Guardiola, even Spurs and Postecoglou, and Arsenal with Arteta, they had their bad moments, but there was always sort of foundations. You could kind of see the direction of travel they were trying to get. And I just haven't seen that with Man United, especially after what I thought was quite a promising first season. They've regressed enormously, and the numbers are just horrific. The last 7 Premier League games, they've conceded 165 shots. 6 of their 7 opponents have had at least 22 shots. This calendar year, they've played 9 Premier League matches and conceded at least 16 shots in every game, giving up 2.05 expected goals and at least 8 corners in 8 of those 9 occasions. It's kind of Sheffield United standards, what we're talking about here. And for that reason, I'm just happy to oppose them. I can absolutely see them raising their game, causing problems on the counter-attack and giving Liverpool a hard time, really. But I think Liverpool are close to 1.8 to win the game. You just have to back them, really. This is a team who, yes, will always give you an opportunity because of their defensive vulnerabilities at times and their gung-ho nature. But I think midfield is starting to look strong and solid. We talked about it back in August. It's going to take time for that midfield to bed in, but Endo, McAllister, Szoboszlai, I love the balance of that three. I think against Brighton, we saw McAllister at his best, really, in the position he was bought to be played in. And Endo's been a revelation too. So I think midfield, they're absolutely the better side. And going forward, there's a few better teams than Liverpool in terms of the firepower at their disposal. So it's going to be very difficult for United to keep them at bay. They've conceded gallons of shots and opportunities in the games they've played against Liverpool already this season. At some point, that's going to count for something. So, a relentless Liverpool. Clearly, I don't think it's worth mentioning too that they both have a Thursday to Sunday turnaround, but Liverpool at home to Sheffield United compared to United away at Chelsea, chalk and cheese really. So advantage to the Reds in that sense.
Yeah, it seems everything does point to that Liverpool win. 177 now on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, and you'd imagine that'll move one way or the other based on Thursday night's results. Maybe a small bit of reactionary, so do maybe check out so you could nick a bit of value depending on those Thursday night results. Adrian, I mentioned the 147 available on both teams to score. Yes, you feel that's too short?
Yeah, I do. Look, there's every chance that could land, but sometimes the price just winks at you, and it just feels too big. And for me, both teams to score no at 2.88 is massive. Not least because Liverpool, I think, are capable of winning it to 0. I think obviously this game was 0-0 the other way round. I know that United rode their luck, but they did keep a clean sheet in that game. Failed to score, of course. There's been a lot of 0-0s down the years between these two clubs. So yeah, I think both teams to score it is a real runner here. I don't disagree with anything Mark said, by the way. I think Liverpool are overwhelming favourites and should win the game. The one thing that put me off of just following Mark in on Liverpool is their record against the top 6 this season. They've won just once, 1 of 7 games against the top 6. So, that there is that little bit of a question mark still over them. And obviously, they lost at Old Trafford in the FA Cup. So, yeah, that put me off a little bit. But yeah, United haven't scored tons of goals on home turf. Both teams to score no has landed in half of their home games this season in the Premier League as well. And yeah, it's more likely, I think, that Liverpool can win to 0, like Man City did earlier on in the season. So yeah, I think Liverpool have potential to start fast, get their noses in front, and then just toy with Manchester United and keep them at bay and win the game comfortably. So yeah, just at 2.88, I just felt it was worth flagging that up. If you're not 100% all in on Liverpool here, this is an alternative that I'm throwing in. By the way, I've written a piece for the Premier League website on United's porous defending. It's sort of headlined something regarding Cole Palmer, but if anyone wants to check that out, I mean, I've got some good stats in there. It is unreal, and I feel embarrassed that I backed them to beat Brentford last weekend. Given how appalling that performance was. It's one of the worst Manchester United displays I think I've ever seen. Certainly without the ball, just a car crash, really. And the big issue, actually, or one of the big issues, because there are loads, is defending set pieces. Check out the numbers. I can't remember them to hand. I've got them in that piece on the Premier League site. It's a frightening amount of chances that they give up pretty much every game from corners and free kicks. They don't know what they're doing. And that for that reason alone, Ten Hag should be sacked. But I think he has to go this summer. He has to go because Manchester United without the ball are embarrassing, and he's had long enough to fix it. And the attitude of the players, the organisation of the players is nowhere near the level that it should be. And pure talent alone has kept them in the race for top 4. It's nothing to do with the manager at all, in my opinion. So yeah, Liverpool will probably win, but yeah, both teams to score is an alternative. Both teams to score no is an alternative because the price is massive.
Yeah, 288. Mark doesn't want to know how close I was because that was a good case. I'm picking Adrian's selection, but we will lock in Liverpool solid and lock it in at 177 before it gets any shorter. The nil all draw.
One thing I should mention just before we move on is they've blanked in 3 of their last 5 against Liverpool, Man United. So it's not. I know that they won the cup game 4-3, but yeah, yeah, they've had problems breaking them down in recent times. So yeah, there you go.
And the 0-0 draw, incidentally, for those love cheering that on, 30.0 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange at the time of recording, 25 or 26.0 on the sportsbook. So maybe worth a small saver there. We'll move on to an interesting kickoff time here. Tottenham Hotspur versus Nottingham Forest, the second game in Super Sunday, 6 o'clock kickoff. The Chelsea are also in action at 5:30 on Sunday. A couple of weird times, so don't miss out on them. Tottenham 143 favourites, Forest 8.0. Draw is 5.5. Both teams to score yes. 167 favours in that market to 232 no. The Asian handicap line is 1.25 with Forest getting that head start. And the total here is 3.5. Unders is the favourite though at 179. Adrian, I watched all 90 minutes of Tottenham versus Luton, and while the game statement Tottenham dominated the game, I wasn't necessarily impressed by them. They were a bit better away to West Ham, didn't probably take their chances. It seems like it's a big enough game coming up on Sunday if it is a top 4 race and there isn't that 5th spot for Champions League at the end of the season.
Yeah, they're maybe not in top gear at the moment, Spurs, but they got their sort of first choice defence in situ, haven't they? And they've got their players fit again. It's just about who does Postecoglou select. Yeah, I don't think he's been overly happy the last couple of games, really. But I think they'll be buoyed by what happened with Villa at Manchester City. They'll be hoping that really knocks their confidence. And they'll start to believe that top 4 is definitely possible. Home to Forest, you got to fancy them. I mean, they do have a strong home record, Tottenham Hotspur, this season against bottom half teams at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They've won 7 of 8. The only exception was Chelsea, who are bottom half. But we all know what happened in that game. It was bonkers. They basically didn't have any players left on the pitch, Tottenham. So this is the kind of game they've been winning. And all of those games against bottom half sides at home featured over 2.5 goals. So that's my pick, Tottenham, and over 2.5. It comes in at 1.89. 80% of Spurs games have gone over 2.5 this season. And at home, that increases to 87%. Which equates to 13 of 15 home games have seen at least 3 goals. So there's a strong possibility they can do that against a Forest team who don't have a very good defence. Let's face it. They played great, didn't they, against Fulham? Well done to them for that. That was a superb first half performance in particular. Blew them away. But I feel attack might be the best form of defence for Forest. I really don't rate them, rate their back 4. And maybe Nuno thinks that too. He certainly thought that at the start of his tenure, where it was all about goals, goals, goals. They let in so many that he sort of railed back on it. But against Fulham, they released that handbrake. And maybe at Spurs, they'll just think attack is the best form of defence here. Let's go for it. Let's try and cause Spurs problems. There might be a goal in it for Nottingham Forest. Their away games average 3 per game. So I fancy Tottenham here. They did beat Forest 2-0 at the City Ground pretty comfortably. Forest have blanked in a third of their away games as well, which puts me off of going for Spurs and both teams to score a little bit because there's a lot of games there where they don't find the back of the net. But yeah, Spurs to win a pretty entertaining game is my take on it, because I do think that Postecoglou will get his players fired up for it. There's a bit of competition for places starting to catch fire at the top end of the pitch. Richarlison's been on the bench lately, Kulusevski as well. I think the players that start will know they need to deliver, and I think they will against Forest.
Okay, currently 189 Tottenham to win and over 2.5 goals. Mark, your thoughts on this game?
Very similar, really. I haven't been overly impressed by Spurs in the last couple of weeks, but clearly they've got the full squad available to them now, so they are a danger. They are a menace, especially at home, where they've done the majority of their best work at 11 wins from 15 in front of the home supporters. Adrian's outlined their record at home to bottom half teams already, but I'm going to be a bit more aggressive than Adrian, so sort of flipping reversing the 2 roles of ourselves. I'm going to back the Spurs to win and BTTS price, which has gone up to 266. Just feels like a huge increase on the Tottenham price of 140 odd just to win the game by including both teams to score. Tottenham's style approach under Postecoglou just lends itself to high scoring games, and they've only kept 2 clean sheets at home under Postecoglou, only one of which came against a bottom half side, which was Fulham. So, almost all of those bottom half victories have included both teams to score, included against Sheffield United, Luton, Everton. They're all strugglers alongside Forest. And I think Forest will take a proactive approach here because, survival's on the line. Why would you go to Tottenham and try and play out for a point when there's vulnerabilities with that defence, especially coming off one of their best performances of the season in midweek against Fulham, which I watched the first 45 minutes. They absolutely obliterated them, forced Marco Silva into a triple first half change. Such was their dominance, really. And Morgan Gibbs-White was utterly unplayable for the most part as well, one of his best performances. Chris Wood contributing brilliantly. Callum Hudson-Odoi. You got Reina and Origi off the bench. They're not short of attacking options. As Adrian says, it's defensively where they've just not been able to settle at all. And again, set piece defending is, Adrian's talking about Man United, but Forest are on another level, really. Tosin Adarabioyo scored, could have had another couple against Forest in midweek. But yeah, the flip side is going forward, you're looking at a team who've kept 2 home clean sheets against a Forest side, scrapping for their lives, who scored in 12 of their last 14. You look at the individuals, all the qualities in forward areas. So I don't think there's any reason why Forest can't score here. If Luton can, if Sheffield United can, why can't Forest? And but ultimately, it's been like a poorly held secret, really, about Forest just being dreadful away travellers since promotion. But when they step up in class, it is really, really poor. 7 defeats and 8 trips to the top 9 this season, 9 defeats and 10 trips to the top half last season. So I can understand the pricing here. Spurs quite rightfully short price favourites, but to boost that price from 140-ish to 266 just to include BTTS feels worth it for me.
Yeah, I'm in. 266 Tottenham, both teams to score. Adrian beaten well there, but well played. Mark, he's figured out the bigger price tends to get the selection, so it's taken 31 game weeks.
If you'd gone with me there, Mark, I think Mark would have come through the screen and offered you out.
Yeah, that'd have been it. So, yeah, we could have been in trouble for getting them back for the Euro 2024. So I'm thinking of the bigger picture as always, Adrian. Full recap of all the guys' selections. You don't all have to go with me, obviously, podcast listeners. Insights.matchbook.com. Check that out. Full recap from Thursday afternoon. Adrian, I'm delighted you picked this game out because when I saw this pop up as a Sky game after one of the games on Monday, Easter Monday, that is, I was so excited. I couldn't believe this fixture is next. This is a massive, massive derby, Norwich versus Ipswich. As big a derby as there been between the two sides in years.
The Old Farm, it's fantastic. They've not played, against each other at Carrow Road for a number of years. So the atmosphere is going to be electric at Norwich City, who would, they need the points for their playoff push, but they'd also absolutely love to wreck Ipswich Town's hopes of a top 2 finish. So loads and loads of motivation here for Norwich, but also clearly for an Ipswich Town side that are just on the wildest of rides. It's been phenomenal from them this season. They're on a great run as well of winning games. I think 9 of the last 10, scoring goals for fun. And even when they're second best, they've got this relentless will to push on and commit bodies forward in search of goals. Ipswich, they are a terrific watch, particularly at home. But yeah, they'd love to win this game too. So I think it'll be a really good spectacle. Don't miss it. Would be my advice. If you can catch it on TV or radio, make sure you do. I think that Norwich are really strong at home. Josh Sargent's having a cracking campaign, much better suited to Championship football. Probably sort of too good for the Championship, maybe not good enough for the Prem. That's where I sort of put him at the minute. But he's got good pace, and I think he can cause Ipswich a lot of problems. But they're not great at the back, Norwich, and Ipswich's strength is very much inside the opposition half. So yeah, it should be great. I'm going to go with a bet builder. It's an unusual one for me. I'm going to kind of sit on the fence in regards to who's going to win the game. I think it's a pick 'em. I really do. I'm going to go with both teams to score for the reasons outlined. Both attacks are far stronger than defences, and there's a lot of motivation to go and win the game. So yeah, I think both teams will score here. It's a very short price. So what am I going to pair it with? Well, I'm going to pair it with bookings for Ipswich. 19.5 booking points, which I believe is over 2 bookings for Ipswich Town in this fixture. They're away in a local derby. The crowd are going to be baying for blood every time there's a foul. I think there's a very realistic prospect that they'll pick up a few bookings here at Ipswich Town. Sam Morsey gets a booking pretty much every game. So there's one in the bag already. He's got, I don't know how many he's got this season, 13, 14, 15, I'm not sure. And yeah, Ipswich in general do pick up a lot of cautions. 91 for the season so far. Now, only one team in the Championship has collected more yellow cards than the Tractor Boys. That's Stoke City. So yeah, over 2 bookings and both teams to score, and it comes out at even money. So it's just a fun one to follow if you want to tune in for the game.
Yeah, I like that, Mark. I presume you're proud watching your partner in crime, Adrian, here pick out the booking points. Nail one already.
100%. I've privately already backed a booking space bet on this game. Goals and cards combined. So there's a positive refereeing appointment too. I forget the name of the ref, but he's averaging around 4.5 cards per game. So it's always good.
Come on.
Yeah. So yeah, you only need 2 Ipswich cards basically there, Adrian, as well. Over 19.5. 2 or more.
Right.
So
okay. Yeah.
10 booking points for a yellow. Or a red card. One red card will do it as well. So red card is 25 points and the yellow is 10. So yeah,
I should have put it as my best bet. Yeah, there you go.
Not too late. We'll have producer Ryan keeping an eye on that document. Second selection as well. You've got a boring game coming up here, I guess, in League One.
Yeah, a bit different. It's another bet builder. I'm getting a little bit addicted to these, aren't I? Blackpool against Cambridge in League One. Yeah, so both teams to score no and under 3.5 goals is my selection here. Again, it's even money at 2.0. So effectively, we're going for the 0-0 or the 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, either way. Both teams to score no has landed in 6 of the last 8 for Cambridge United, who have had a few blanks. That said, they had a good Easter. 2 excellent wins, including the one at Barnsley, which I backed against them, which made me look a little bit foolish. But that was an unreal result. Never saw that one coming. 25 of 40 games for them over the season has also seen both teams score no land for Cambridge. And 80% of their games have gone under 3.5. So, they're a side that's not involved in that many high-scoring games. Things tend to be fairly tight. They often sort of come unstuck in close-fought matches, Cambridge United. But the reason I was really attracted to this bet was Blackpool's recent form. 7 games in a row, Blackpool have had both teams score no land. And in that last 7, all have been under 2.5 goals. And 6 of the 7 have been under 1.5 goals. It's been quite remarkable. They've been very binary, the score lines. Lots of 1-0s either way, a few 0-0s. The goal difference is 3-3 across the last 7 matches for Blackpool. So things are going really, really tight. Strong at the back, not very good going forward. And there's big motivation for Cambridge to get something. And for Blackpool, they'll be striving to sort of maybe jump into the playoffs, but I think it'd be too much for them. But yeah, I expect this to be cagey, close for, and for that reason, both teams to score no and under 3.5 for me.
Okay, we got both teams to score yes, Ipswich and over 19.5 booking points at even money, and then both teams to score no, Blackpool versus Cambridge combined with under 3.5 goals, the same price, even money. Mark, take us away for League One. We've got one selection here in our European section.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Lens' game against Le Havre on Saturday afternoon. Lens have lost back-to-back games either side of the international break, which has really put the mockers on their chances of finishing the top 3 again, unfortunately for them. They did wonderfully well to finish second last season, qualified for the Champions League, and I thought they put in a reasonable shift in the Champions League group stage. But it's, I think it's a 7-point gap now between themselves and the top 3. Last week's defeat to Lille in the derby was particularly painful, really, and just kind of continues a poor run of form against the best teams in the division. They've only won once and lost 8 times in 10 games against the top 5 this season. However, they have posted 11 wins, 5 draws, and just the 1 defeat when taking on sides below them, which is 6th and below. And luckily for them, they're at home this weekend against a bottom half struggler. They are pretty much flat track bullies in France. That's Lens, that is. Super strong operators at home, especially against the lesser lights. 6 wins from 8 this season, and they went 10 from 10 when hosting bottom half teams last season. So always like siding them with them in these kind of environments. And they're playing a half side who made a promising start after promotion, back in the top flight for the first time in quite some years, really. They only lost 3 times before December, but things have really unravelled since then. 3 wins, 2 draws, and 9 defeats, and all 3 of those victories came at home as well. More recently, they've lost 6 of 7. They've fallen right back into the relegation picture, just 1 place and 1 point above the relegation playoff place. And if you look at the last 8 games, they've scored just once in terms of a non-penalty goal. They scored 3 goals. 1 was an own goal, 1 was a penalty, and 1 was your standard open play goal. So really struggling for attacking thrust, momentum, and impetus. And away from home, they've scored just 12 times all season as well. And this looks a really tall hurdle to try and overcome. Lens, with that atmospheric stadium with a big crowd behind them, always tends to be a very difficult place to go in France. So happy to side with Lens. I'm surprised you can get Lens close to 1.6. But to boost it to a more palatable price, just include under 4.5 goals will give us a nice boost up to about 1.87. Just 4 of these 2 teams' combined games in Liga this season have featured 5 goals or more.
Okay, seems solid bet to me. 187 at the time of recording. Heading to best long shots, and to you, Adrian. And Bristol City got the job done in the long shot section. We combined it with over 1.5 goals. For anyone that watched that game, I don't know how there wasn't a second goal for either side, because Bristol City rode their luck as an underdog should. But great shout nonetheless. Take it away with your pick this week.
Yeah, cheers, Dan. Yeah, it was unlucky, that one. I'm going to go with Luton against Bournemouth. Not that I was massively impressed with them at Emirates last night, but they did shore things up really quite impressively in the second half, limited Arsenal to next to nothing. So that will give them some confidence moving forwards. I just think that they're a little bit too long in the odds here. It's a must win, really. They've got to see this home to Bournemouth as a match they have to win if they're going to pull off an escape here. And for the Cherries, I can't say anything bad about them. They're in good form. They're 4 wins from 5. They're flying. So I'm not going to knock Bournemouth, but they could be starting to think about the beach. It's the first reference to that maybe on the pod this season, but they might be, because they're obviously not going down. They're not going to qualify for Europe. So the motivation of Luton, I think, is going to be vastly superior to Bournemouth here. Luton had scored in 18 successive games. That run's ended now, but it shows you what they're capable of. And I would expect them to score at least 1 in this game. They've scored in every game apart from 1 at Kenilworth Road this season. Luton games averaged quite a lot of goals as well, 3.2. Both teams' scorers landed in 80% of them. I did look at Luton and both teams to score, which was 5.9, but I'm going to go with Luton and over 2.5 here against Bournemouth. 5.3 is the price. High scoring games for Bournemouth away from home. 3.71 is their average on the road. It's the 3rd highest in the Premier League. The game at the Vitality was a classic. Luton, I think, were 3-0 up and lost 4-3. Is that right? It was an absolute brilliant game. So there's a little bit of a revenge here for Luton. I think it'll be another good game. And I'm backing them to come out on top in a game of goals. So yeah, Luton and over 2.5. I just think at 5.3, that's a decent long shot.
Okay, we'll lock that in. Luton and over 2.5 goals for Adrian. Mark, you can bring this into your best bet as well, but Harrogate is like Adrian. You hit the crossbar big time there. They went 1-0 up, then Wimbledon were down to 10 men, but you like them in both the long shots and best bets this week.
Yeah, I've had to sort of alter the odds and also almost alter the selections as well, because the market is starting to have a big move on Harrogate. And last weekend I sort of painted the picture of them and their campaign, how they are the data defiers away from home, still have only lost 5 times on the road, and results elsewhere meant that now only Mansfield and Stockport, the top 2 in the division, have accrued more points away from home than Harrogate. So Simon Weaver's doing an incredible job there. And they were very, very good at Wimbledon. They followed it up with one of their best performances of the season on Easter Monday by absolutely demolishing Gillingham. They're in great nick at the minute. So, I don't really need to spend too much more time on Harrogate. The more interesting thing here is they're going to a Notts County side who started the campaign after promotion as third favourites in League Two with a huge amount of expectation and excitement because of the style of football they played. I was definitely one of those who believed they could make another tilt at promotion, actually rated them higher than Wrexham coming into this campaign, and they started the season really strongly. But things started to unravel towards the end of autumn, early winter time. There were lots of rumours suggesting Luke Williams was being looked at by bigger fish in the EFL, and form started to go a little bit awry. I'm not saying that was the reason for it, but certainly since he has departed as coach to Swansea in January, things have escalated a little bit further. Quite sad, really, to see them demise, really, of Notts County, because they are a great team, play football in the right manner, but defensively they are utterly hopeless. And they are very much gettable. If you look at their season, Adrian's already mentioned the beach. Notts County should be on the beach because they're in 16th now, and they're equidistant between the top 7 and the relegation zone. So they're going nowhere, really. But you look at their last 26 league games, 16 defeats. More recently, 13 games, 9 defeats. They've only kept 6 clean sheets all season. In those last 9 games, they've conceded at least twice on 8 occasions. At home, they're winless in 7, 5 defeats, conceding multiple goals in 6 of them as well. And their home record against the top half reads 2-2-6 win-draw losses. So Harrogate beat them comfortably in the reverse. And I think stylistically, they'll quite fancy this game. Notts County tend to dominate the ball, play out from the back, try and sort of replicate the big teams in the Premier League. It doesn't always work at League Two level, and Harrogate are quite a smart and savvy bunch, so I expect them to take advantage. So I'm quite happy to back Harrogate to win the game, but to boost it to long shot territory. We'll include both teams to score because Notts County, despite their position, have the worst defence in the league and the best attack in the league. So they've only been blanked 6 times. So it's a rarity for Notts to be shut out. So if Harrogate are going to do it, they probably will have to score at least twice here, which most teams are doing against Notts County right now. Oh yeah, sorry. The best bet was the best bet was Harrogate +1, remarkably at 1.8, but it's been absolutely battered in the last 24 hours. So I'll back Harrogate with a half-goal start instead. They've lost 5 times away all season, and playing a side as out of form as Notts County. 2.1 to avoid defeat feels like a decent price to me.
Yeah, I was going to bring the stat in at the end, Mark. Most goals scored, most goals conceded, but you robbed it off me. 159 goals, 80 goals scored, 79 conceded. Have to watch Notts County games before the end of the season, especially if they go on the beach. Adrian, you gave this a good case. I didn't pick it as my selection in the match, so I'm sorry for the anticlimactic feel to this bet now, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all right. I thought about changing it to the Norwich Ipswich one, but I'm going to stick with it. Tottenham and over 2.5 goals against Nottingham Forest. Forest have a woeful record on the road to the strongest sides in the division. They don't have a very good defence. Attack will be the best form of defence for Nottingham Forest in this game. So expect them to go for it, and that will, they might get on the score sheet, but that will leave the back door open. And I think Spurs are more than capable of covering this on their own, scoring 3 goals. Spurs games at home this season, 13 of the 15 have gone over 2.5 goals. So if you fancy Tottenham, as most people I'm guessing would, to beat Nottingham Forest, well, the odds are stacked heavily in your favour that they'll be over 2.5 goals as well, which is why it's my best bet.
Okay, yeah, fun podcast there. Enjoyed that. My thanks to Mark and Adrian. We'll be back on Monday with Miguel Delaney covering the Champions League, and we finally have good Champions League ties to talk about, and I'm very much looking forward to doing that. We'll be back Monday. We'll be out in your podcast feeds Monday afternoon, and so will the Matchbook Insights article. Best of luck if you're having a bet on the Matchbook Betting Exchange this weekend. We will chat to you on Monday. Bye-bye.